Maseches Nedarim Daf Samach Vav continues discussing the halachos of taking off a neder, being a matir neder. It takes us to the end of the 9th parak of the Masechta, and we have two lengthy mishnayos. The first mishnah brings us to the shita of Rabbi Akiva, which we've seen discussed at length earlier in the Masechta, of neder shel hutar miktsasai hutar kuli. If part of a neder is canceled, the entire neder is canceled. The Mishnah gives a number of examples of that halacha. And the second Mishnah will teach us the halacha which was just mentioned on the previous daf, about a situation in which you have a mistake or something that the neder was dependent on, which proved to be not true or was changed, how that affects the neder then on. So the Gemara begins with the first Mishnah, which discusses Rabbi Akiva's halacha, and it gives a number of examples of a neder where you canceled part of the neder, and therefore Rabbi Akiva says the entire neder is canceled. So first of all, it says, it doesn't mention the case, but just goes into the psak. If you have someone who made a neder that's not going to have enough from meat or from wine or something along those lines, and the problem is that he has to have those things on Shabbos and Yontif. So the neder is canceled as far as Shabbos goes and Yontif goes. So the Chachamim before Rabbi Akiva came would say, the neder is only canceled as far as Shabbos and Yontif. However, it is still valid as far as the other days of the year. He just can eat those meat and wine on Shabbos and Yontif, but not everything else. Came Rabbi Akiva and he said a neder which is canceled partially, such as this, which is canceled for Shabbos and Yontif, is canceled completely. Then he gave more examples. If somebody says he's not going to have enough from a group of people, and he changes it, he finds out that one of them is his father or something, and it's canceled for him, so it's canceled for everyone else. Now the Mishnah here brings two examples of this. First one, he says, I'm not going to have enough to all of you as a group, and then one of them becomes a mutter. They are all mutter. If he says to you and to you and to you and to you individually, so we had a discussion earlier in the Masechta, if he changed from one to the other. First he said to you as a group, and then he said, had I known, I would have made it to you individually and left him out. And we had a machlokes as to which one, what is the halacha if he switches from one to the other, and how this affects the halacha over there. However, in this case, the Mishnah's psak is, it depends which one is the one that became mutter, which one is the one who he never would have made the neder had he realized he was there. If it was the first one, then they're all mutter. If it was the last one, then they're all remaining usher except for the last one. And the Gemara explained earlier that the pshat is that he made each one dependent on the one before, that he said to the first one, I'm not having enough from you, and then he said to the second one, you're like the first one, and then the third one, you're like the second one, and so on and so forth. So if the first one is nothing, then they're all nothing, and if the last one is nothing, then everyone else is still good along the way. Now, there's a potential girsa here in the Mishnah where we add that if the middle one was canceled, then all the ones after him are canceled, because they're all dependent on him, and all the ones before him are okay. Now, the Mishnah continues to its next example, and that's slightly different halacha. If someone says that to have hana from you is carbon, and then he says, and to have hana from you is carbon. So these are two completely separate nedarim, even though they were mentioned within one breath, or the toch kedei dibur. And if he has a heter from one, does not mean he has heter for the other. You don't say hodar miksasa hodar kulan, and therefore you have to have a separate heter for each of them. Next, if he says, I have an issue on wine because wine is bad for the intestines, and they tell him no, but old wine is good for the intestines, so then all wine is now mutter to him, because since his neder was canceled as far as old wine, its hotar kulan is canceled as far as all wine. Same thing if he asks onions, because onions are bad for the heart, and they tell him, but a kufri onion is good for the heart, because the neder is canceled as far as kufri onions, therefore it's canceled as far as all onions. The Mishnah says there was an incident that happened, and Rabbi Meir was matir all onions in a case just like this. Right now, the Gemara has a brief comment. The Gemara says, we had the case where the last one became asr. The last we had where he asred a group of people one at a time, so the last one became mutter, then all the other ones remain usr. So that means that if you ask them one at a time, you're usr, you're usr, you're usr, you're usr, they are all usr, and you can cancel them individually. The Gemara says this is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says that if you say a separate shavua, that you didn't steal something from someone, to a bunch of different people individually, they each count as separate shavuas. As long as you say them to each one individually, they don't count all as one, even though if they all costed you as one, and you answer them all as one. But if you say to you and to you and to you, it counts separately. So here also we're counting these different shuas separately. Next, the Mishnah says, Why, in the case of the onion and the wine, did they have to tell him that you're making a mistake, that old wine is good for the intestines and kufri onions are good for the heart? Why don't you just say that it's not bad? He said it's bad, and then he finds out that it's not bad. Why do I have to say that it's good? So the Gemara says you have to adjust the Mishnah slightly, that they said it's not bad, and they even went ahead and said that it's actually good, a step further. But you don't need to have that step further for the halacha to be true. Now we begin the next Mishnah, a lengthy Mishnah which has two independent halachos, almost like two Mishnayos with no Gemara in between. First one talks about using one's own kavod because of his neder as a Pesach, and the second one talks about if the neder was based on a mistake. So first of all, the Mishnah says that a person is allowed to use his kavod and the kavod of his children as a Pesach. That means if he makes a neder and it makes him look bad in hindsight and he hadn't realized that it would, that's a heter. So the Mishnah's example is they say to him, if you would know that after you made the neder, and specifically here we're referring to where the neder was answering his wife or his children to have hana, and he said, if you would know that tomorrow they're going to say about you that this is what he does, this guy, he divorces his wives, or about his children, that they'll say that they are the children of a divorced woman. And what do you think the mother saw that she decided to get divorced from this guy? Must be something happening over here. All these terrible things they'll be saying about you just because of the neder that you made. If you would have known all that, would you have made the neder? And if he says, no, I would never have made the neder had I known, then that is a Pesach and matters the neder. Now, the second halacha here is if something changes or if it was based on a mistake. So we've seen this quoted on yesterday's daf. The Mishnah says if something changes, that is not considered to be a heter. If he made it based on something where it changes, according to this Mishnah, is not heter, so others disagree. However, if he was wrong, then that is a heter for the neder, and it doesn't even need to be shol, or Ran explains, because it's based on a mistake. So if he says to make an isser na on a certain woman, I'm not going to marry her because she's ugly, and it turns out that she was really beautiful, because that he says he doesn't want to, he makes the neder because she's dark skinned, but it turns out that she's light skinned, or she's tall, and it turns out she's short. So then the neder is off. Not because, the Mishnah emphasizes, not because she changed and became beautiful, light skinned, or tall, but because the neder was a mistake. It was all along not the condition that he thought it was, which he clearly indicated in the language that he made the neder. Now, the Mishnah makes a story. The Mishnah said there was somebody who made a neder not to marry his niece, his sister's daughter. I made an isra on her, and they brought her to the house of Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel made her beautiful. And Rabbi Shmuel then brought her to this man, and he said, my son, is this the woman that you made a neder asering anah from? And he said, no. And based on that, Rabbi Shmuel was matir the neder, and they were able to get married. At that time, Rabbi Shmuel cried, and he said, the daughters of Israel are beautiful, but the poverty makes them ugly. And when Rabbi Shmuel, when he died, the Benos Yisrael made a lament, they made a dirge for him, they mourned for him, and they said, Benos Yisrael, about Rabbi Shmuel, B'chena, cry. And it says the same thing by Shaul, Benos Yisrael, B'chena, cry for Shaul. So the Gemara asks that this Mishnah contradicts the halacha that the Mishnah said with its own story. The halacha that the Mishnah said was that it's only if the person's neder was wrong, and not if it changed afterwards. But yet we have the story where Rabbi Shmuel went and changed the woman. She was ugly, and he beautified her. That means that he changed her. Why should I take the neder off? So the Gemara says it's missing something. You have to phrase it as follows. Rabbi Shmuel disagrees, and Rabbi Shmuel says even if she was ugly and she became beautiful, dark-skinned, she became light-skinned, short, and she became tall, then it's still okay. And then he brings the story. The Mishnah brings the story that there was a man who made this neder against his niece, and Rabbi Shmuel beautified her. Now, what actually happened here? So the Gemara quotes a brisa that says that she had had a missing tooth that they had replaced with a fake tooth that was very ugly, and Rabbi Shmuel made her a gold tooth from his own money, and then she was able to look beautiful because of that tooth. Now the brisa continues and says that after Rabbi Shmuel died, there was a mourner who said a eulogy for him. He said, daughters of Yisrael, cry for Rabbi Shmuel, who dresses you in beautiful things, etc., etc. Now the Gemara brings a couple of incidents. There was a man who said to his wife, I'm making an isser anah on you until you feed, give a taste of your soup or your stew to Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Shimon. So she went to Rabbi Yehuda and Shimon with the stew. Rabbi Yehuda agreed to eat it, and he said, certainly I should be able to do this to bring peace between a man and his wife. Kal v'chomer, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows his name to be erased to bring peace between the sota and her husband, and that's just because of a suffix, maybe he'll bring peace, maybe he won't. If all I have to do is eat this and I'll bring peace between this man and his wife, certainly I'm going to do it. Now Rabbi Shimon refused to eat it, and he said, let the children of this man die, let the children of this widow die before I move from my place, before I change my position. Meaning it was two curses. First of all, that the woman should become a widow, lose her husband, and then she should lose her children. Now the reason for it, the Gemara explains, is because he did not want people to get used to making all these kind of nedarim, and therefore he did not want to participate in this entire incident. Now the Gemara brings another incident. There's a man who said to his wife, I'm not going, you have an Isser Hana until you spit on Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. So she went and she spat on his clothing. Ra'ach Midifti said to Ravina, that's not exactly what he had in mind. He wanted to do something really degrading and embarrassing to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Spitting on his clothing is not degrading. He wanted to spit in his face. So he said, no, it's a good enough heter because of the chashivas of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Him having any spittle on his clothing is embarrassing enough, and therefore she fulfilled what the net exactly was. Now there was a man who said to his wife, I have an Isser on you until you could find me something beautiful about you, something that's befitting about you. Apparently she was a very ugly woman, or very blemished in every way that could possibly be thought of. So he said, find something beautiful and show it to Bishmo ben Yosi, that he should appreciate this beauty about you, that he can identify something beautiful about you. So people came and said this over to Bishmo ben Yosi, and Bishmo ben Yosi was trying to find something about her that was befitting, so that he could say that the neder is off. So he said, maybe her head is beautiful. So they said, no, it's a funny shape, it's too round. Maybe her hair is beautiful. No, it looks like rolls of wool. Maybe her eyes are beautiful. No, they're trutos, that means that they're particularly round or particularly elongated. Maybe her ears are beautiful. No, they're twice as large as they should be. Maybe her nose is beautiful. No, it's actually sealed shut. Maybe her lips are beautiful. No, they're too thick. Maybe her neck is beautiful. No, it's too short. Maybe her stomach is beautiful. No, it's bloated. Maybe her feet are beautiful. No, they're too wide, or they're wide like a goose. Maybe her name is beautiful. Her name is befitting. So they said, well, her name is lachluchis, which means dirty or disgusting. Couldn't possibly be something worse than that. So he said, what a beautiful name. You see, it's very much befitting for her because she is sullied with all these mumin, with all these blemishes, and her name means sullied, so it's perfectly definitive and beautiful about her. And based on that, he was matter her to her husband. Then there was another incident. There was a Babylonian who came to Eretz Yisrael, and he and his wife apparently had a difficult time with communication. He married a woman from Eretz Yisrael, and he said to her, please cook for me 2 lentils. And he meant a few lentils. But that was the language that he used, but she wanted to fulfill his word exactly, so she cooked 2 lentils. Now that, of course, was worthless to him, so he became upset. The next day he said to her, cook for me a whole container of lentils. So she went and she cooked him a whole container of lentils. Again, he had just meant enough, but she did the whole thing. So that made him even more upset. Apparently the word doesn't say it, but this continued. So then he said, go bring me butzini. Butzini means melons, but she used the other meaning of it, which means lamps. So she went and she brought 2 candles. So he said, go break it on the head of the gate, which in Aramaic is Resha de Bava. But she went outside and she found none other than Bava ben Buta, whose name was Talmid Chacham, sitting by the gate. And he was speaking in halacha. So she went and she said, okay, I'm supposed to break it on the head of Bava. So she went and she broke it on his head. So Bava said, what is this? So she explained, this is what my husband commanded me to do. So he said, if you went so far and you fulfilled your husband's will, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give you 2 children as great as Bava ben Buta himself. And this ends the 9th parak of the Masechta.